وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Brothers and sisters, we have a Q&A here on gossiping and slander. We'll get right to it. Abdul Fattah, go ahead and start us with our first question.
What is the difference between ghiba and namima?
Ghiba and namima. The Prophet ﷺ established in his sunnah, his authentic sunnah, about both ghiba and namima. The Prophet ﷺ told us about the person who does ghiba. And he said that the person who does ghiba, who commits ghiba, which we call backbiting, he mentioned him in regards to ghiba, the individual who commits ghiba, in a negative light. And he told us the punishment and the sin of ghiba. The Sahabi said, what if that person has done or has what I have said about them? Prophet Muhammad said, إن كان فيه ما تقول فقد اغتبته. If what you say about the person is true, then you have done ghiba. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if it is not true, then you have فَقَدْ بَهَتَّهُ. You have slandered him. So the Prophet ﷺ told us, أَتَدْرُونَ مَا الْغِيبَةِ? Do you all know what ghiba is? He said, ذِكْرُكَ أَخَاكَ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ. To mention your brother in a way that he dislikes. To mention a characteristic about your brother that he dislikes. To mention some private affair about your brother. A private something about your brother that they dislike. You mention it in their absence to people. You do that about your sister. You do that about your auntie, your uncle. You do that about your mother. Or what have you. You mention them in a light, in a way. You mention something about them that it will cause them harm if they knew that you were mentioning about evil things about them, or you were saying things about them. So a Sahabi thought that, well, what if I said what is true? Meaning I didn't make a lie, but I said what happened was true. I said some characteristic about the person and that's true. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that is ghiba. That you mentioned somebody in a bad light and those things are true. So by the simple action of mentioning them, talking about them, calling them names, lamenting, saying what they did, how they mistreated you, how they this, that, so on and so forth, then even if you say what is true, then that is ghiba. Now if you slander a person, for example, you make up a false reality, or alternative reality, alternative narrative, a situation happened, and you have a different spin on the situation than the people who went through the same ordeal or went through the situation. You have a different spin on it. So every time you come up with a different spin, a different perspective, you then spread it amongst people and you tarnish people's names. And those stories that you're telling are not true. Why? Because these are alternative realities. They're not true. You want them to be true, or you feel like they're true, but they're not true. Those things that you say about a person and they are not true, it is slander, which is worse than ghiba. It's worse than backbiting. So that's the difference between, of course, ghiba and buhtan. As for namima, namima is to carry tales. We call it he said, she said. Gossiping. When you're carrying tales, tale carrier. Did you hear what this one have said? Did you hear what that one said? Did you know what happened? They call it today what? Abdul Fattah Sultan, they call it spilling the tea. Yeah. Spill the tea. He spilled the tea and we make a thing of it. So that's namima. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, لا يدخل الجنة نمام لا يدخل الجنة بهات. That person will not enter paradise, those who are gossipers. Also, He said in another narration, though that person will not enter paradise, those who are slanderers. And we mentioned here, Mr. Salam, already that Imam al-Nawawi mentioned about these type of hadith, that one meaning is that the person will not enter paradise along with those people who will enter paradise first. So that doesn't mean they won't enter paradise at all. It just means that they won't enter paradise with that type of respect and honor of those who enter first, and they may be punished prior to entering the paradise. So that is the difference between ghiba and namima.
And the verse, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ is
Yes, right. وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ. Do not take a position where you have no knowledge. And unfortunately, if you don't know about a person's situation, then the news is spread. You don't know the details. You hear this side, you hear that side, you hear that side. Rumors are spreading. You don't know what's going on. Then you take it and spread the rumors. Now you've become a gossiper. Spreading rumors, falsifications, falsehood. And some people, man, they're just
what makes them happy.
it just makes them happy to just, or people don't feel really good about themselves. People are going through tough times, and they just spend their time just disparaging someone else's character, destroying someone else's character, making up false realities, alternative realities to situations, and it's very scary situation. But we should be afraid of that.
Question number 2. What happens when you listen to someone backbite?
If you listen to someone who's backbiting and you do not tell them to stop, or say something that would remove you from being a part of that, then you are sharing in the sin. Because you're listening. One person is backbiting, the other person is listening. If that person didn't have an audience, they wouldn't be backbiting. So you're partaking in the sin. Therefore, if a person says something about someone, you can remove yourself from the blame by saying, hey man, watch your mouth. Something simple as that. Hey, look, I ain't got nothing to do with it. You know. In fact, oftentimes if I hear somebody backbiting someone, I say, hey, I ain't got nothing to do with it. I let them know, whatever you're saying, I don't have anything to do with it. You could, whatever you're saying, you're going to be held accountable for it. You're going to be responsible for it. I have nothing to do with what you're saying about that person. Or I will say, hey man, watch what you say. Or you're going to be asked about that. Or you're going to be held accountable for it. Some way to remove you from the blame. You don't have to give a whole lecture, brother. You're not supposed to be, sister. You're not supposed to be backbiting, and you don't have to. You could. That'd be awesome that a person can benefit from that. But at least say, hey man, I don't got nothing to do with what you said. Let them know.
So you don't have to leave the spot, because sometimes if you're at work, for example, and you can't leave, so can you just like listen in because you got no option, you can't leave the place?
Say for example, you're in a meeting.
Yeah.
And a person comes up and you're back, corporate meeting or what have you. If you can't say something like, hey, I don't have anything to do with it, or I don't have an opinion on I don't have such an opinion on that person, some way to remove yourself from the blame. If you can't do that, at least you can hate it in your heart. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Whoever sees an evil deed, you should change it with their hand. You should change it with their hand. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If you're unable to do so with your hand, you may do so with your tongue. And if you are not able to do so, فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. If you're unable to change it with your tongue, then you can hate it in your heart. You can dislike it. Change it in your heart, meaning you just separate yourself from the sin and you dislike what's going on. That is ad'aful iman. That means that is the lowest expression of faith. That when you see something that is evil, you dislike it in your heart. That's the lowest expression. Which also means if you don't at least dislike it, then your faith is in jeopardy. What type of faith do you have, or do you and I have, if we don't dislike the evil that's being committed in front of us? That's right. As Prophet Muhammad said in another hadith, وَلَيْسَ وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ حَبَّةُ خَرْدَلٍ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. After that, there is not even a mustard seed of iman, if you don't at least feel something about it.
Question number 3. What are some ways a person can fall into backbiting?
Allahu A'lam. I don't know exhaustively, but at least you can fall into backbiting by speaking about someone. In fact, Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. Do not call people names that they, basically nicknames, names that they dislike. Don't be name callers. So you can, by calling somebody a name, you know, man, he's fat, man. Oh, did you see how much he was eating, man? He's so greedy, man. Oh, you see, he got a problem. She got a problem, man. He's stingy, man. I asked him, just by calling somebody a name, a label, and you know they would dislike it. Or even if you said it in front of them, they wouldn't mind so much. But the fact that you're saying it behind their back, they mind. So some people, they say, well, I would say it in front of their face. And they justify it a little bit. They're justifying their talking about people by saying, if he were here, I would say it in his face. I don't mind. I don't care. I'll tell him in his face. That doesn't mean you're not backbiting. You're still backbiting. Even though you would tell that person in their face. It's better for you to tell them in their face and leave it at that than to, well, actually better for you to not speak negatively of anyone. As Allah Azza wa Jalla told us in Surah Al-Isra. نعم. وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Tell my servants to say that which is most appropriate. إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنْزَغُ بَيْنَهُم. Satan seeks to sow discord between them. إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ كَانَ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوًّا مُبِينًا. Satan is an evident enemy to the human being. So this is what Allah Azza wa Jalla says, say the best. So number one. Number two, if you want to confront somebody, you want to talk about something, talk to them in their face. You don't have to go behind, talk to this person and talk to that person and talk to this person and talk to that person. This is how you fall into backbiting. And then that person's going to tell their opinion, yeah, you're right, man, they did you that. Man, you right, man, he is a such and such. Man, you right, man, he was wrong when you're right, she. See? Now they're falling into backbiting. And then now you go back and forth. So now you guys are having a good time consuming the flesh of these people. And those people will be rewarded. Those people who you're consuming their flesh, they will be rewarded on the day of judgment. That they will be able to take from your good deeds and put it on their good deeds side. And if you run out of good deeds, they will take from their bad deeds and put it on your side. So, as we said, number one, by just calling people names, you can fall into backbiting. And by listening and carrying on and putting your 2 cents in, you can fall into backbiting as well.
Question number 4. How does backbiting affect one's heart?
Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam told us that when we commit a sin, there's a black spot that comes on our heart. If we then repent to Allah, it will be removed. And he told us that when we commit a good deed, there's a white spot that comes on our heart, a spot of light. So as we are sinning through backbiting, which is one of the most dangerous things, tongue is one of the most dangerous. As Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu used to grab his tongue and he used to say that this thing gets me in trouble, or as he said, alayhi ridwanullah. And Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam took the tongue of Mu'adh ibn Jabal and he said, Kuffa alayka hadha, keep this thing under control. So this tongue is very difficult to keep under control. It affects your heart by going about and using this tongue to carry tales, to gossip, to slander, to speak the truth about people, but in a way that they would dislike behind their backs, spreading their business. You know, as we said, the culture of spilling the tea, and then the whole culture of being all ears. I mean, what is it with the culture of people having to know other people's business? And as I mentioned before on the issue of social media and how it facilitates this alternative culture that is detrimental, it's damaging. People have their whole business online. And then they put other people's business online, when it's actually no one's business except those who is concerned or those who can be of assistance. People think that anytime Dick and Hank can listen to your story, listen to what's going on with you, and give you and be in a position to give you advice. Not everybody. You don't ask a mechanic about surgery. You don't ask a real estate agent about mechanics. I mean, you go to the people who know, and you seek advice from them. So, as Prophet Muhammad said, generally, a person's heart can be tainted by their sins. And that backbiting and continue to backbite will lead you into more backbiting, lead you to disrespect and look down on the honor of your brother and sister. And the Prophet ﷺ said, كل المسلم على المسلم حرام. Every part of the Muslim is inviolable, meaning you cannot violate it. Every part of the Muslim is inviolable. دمه وماله وعرضه. His blood, his wealth, and his dignity. So just like you wouldn't go and snatch someone's money, you should not be tarnishing their reputation or their dignity or their honor. Just as you would not kill a Muslim or take blood from them, exact blood from them, stab them with a knife or cut them, or you wouldn't do bodily harm, you should also respect their honor. So you got people that won't put their hands on a Muslim, won't take their money from them, but will talk about their business and slander them all day, no problem. And they have no qualms about it. They don't have any reservations about it either. That's a problem. May Allah Azza wa Jalla save us.
The fifth question is, what should one do after they have backbitten?
After one has backbitten, they should commit to the 4 R's of repentance. Number 1, remorse. This hand is easier to see. Number 1, remorse. Number 2, refrain. Number 3, repay. Number 3, na'am. So remorse, refrain, resolve, and repay. Remorse, meaning you feel bad about it. Refrain, meaning you stop doing it. Resolve, meaning you have determination never to commit that sin again. And you repay. You repay the people that you have tarnished, the names that you have slandered, the tales that you have carried. Now, as for a person that you have backbitten, you can go to them and say, so-and-so, I did speak ill of you, honestly speaking. Just as you had the guts and the wherewithal to speak about people in their absence, you should have the guts to go to them and say, I spoke about you in your absence, and I'm sorry for that, and I shouldn't have done it. Will you forgive me? Ij'alni fi hil. Basically, make me a way out so that I don't have to be held accountable for it. You should go up to that person and say that. And in fact, only one person has done that to me in their whole life. There's only one person that I know, and I respect him to this day. He used to sit in my khutbahs and things, and I taught some of his children. And he came to me one day after the khutbah, and he said, Imaam, you know, I have been saying things about you, and I said this and that about you, and I come to find out that I was wrong. And I come to find out that people love you and things like that. And he began to explain, to excuse himself. And I'm sorry for what I said. And I said, I accept your apology. Only one person has done that for me. And I'm sure many people than one person has backbitten me. In fact, I'm sure people to this day are backbiting me. Right? But, hey, alhamdulillah, I will be taken from their good deeds on the day of judgment. And if they run out, I'll be putting my bad deeds on them so they can continue to do as they like. But they will be held accountable for their slanders and their backbiting. So alhamdulillah, this person came to me and he said, I'm sorry. So I accepted his apology. But if you feel like that's going to sour your relationship with the person, or may become a bigger issue, a bigger problem, then you may speak good of the person in the same circles that you spoke about them bad. So if you talk to Muhammad and Ahmed about how Khadija was just so out there and she just all over the place and she ratchet and all this stuff that people say right these days. Go on and you're talking about Khadija, for example. Then in the same circles you should say, but Khadija, I was wrong about her. She was actually also, she's a good mother. She's a decent daughter. She prays her prayers. She fasts Ramadan. I was wrong for speaking about. So in the same circles, you can mention her in a good light, or mention him in a good light instead of a bad light. So with these, you can get rid of the sin, inshallah, of backbiting. Wallahu a'lam.
The last question How do you prevent backbiting from happening around you?
As I said before, remove yourself from the blame. Somebody start backbiting, say, I don't have anything to do with what you're saying. Just let them know. I don't have anything to do with it. And say, hey, man, tell them, let them know you're going to be held accountable for that. Even if they give you lip for it, if they talk back at you that you said, no, it doesn't matter. You're going to be held accountable for what you said. Let them know that. You might not be able to stop it, but at least you can remove yourself from the blame. You tell the people, I don't have anything to do with what you said. Allah's not going to ask me about that because that's not appropriate. It's not good for you to be talking about people behind their back. It's not good for you to speak, to call people names behind their back and so on and so forth. I ask that Allah forgive us all. Do we have any questions from the live? Alhamdulillah. Allahumma salli wa sallam wa zid wa barik ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Catch you all later. Sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.